What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. Okay. So, we are looking at Deuteronomy chapter 31 at the moment. The past couple of chapters actually sort of wrapped up the, all the rules overview and different things like that, and, sort of the terms of what I guess, just gonna call, the added covenant for the new generation was all sort of laid out, along with what would happen if they followed and if they did not follow said added covenant. I say added because, it's... I hesitate to use new covenant because, that's a phrase used in the New Testament, kind of to refer to something Jesus lays out at the Last Supper. But it's also more stuff kind of getting added on a little bit to the Old Covenant with the first generation of Israelites after leaving Egypt. So anyway, all that was kind of laid out, and Moses, after that, kind of says, okay, here you go, here's what you need to follow, it's your choice, follow it or not, just know, here's what's going to happen if you do or don't follow it. And unsurprisingly, following it is good stuff, not following it equals bad stuff. But anyway, yeah, so that's the general gist of what's been going on. They're really close to, I think, crossing the Jordan and going into the Promised Land now. But a couple other things that need to be handled first. So, here we go. Deuteronomy chapter 31. When Moses had finished giving these instructions to all the people of Israel, he said, I am now 120 years old, and I am no longer able to lead you. The Lord has told me, you will not cross the Jordan River. But the Lord your God himself will cross over ahead of you. He will destroy the nations living there, and you will take possession of their land. Joshua will lead you across the river, just as the Lord promised. When it says just as the Lord promised, I mean that's kind of referring to back in, I want to say it was Numbers, I don't know, one of the previous books, it was established that Joshua was going to be the next leader after Moses, and he would be the one to actually lead them into the Promised Land. But even after that, Moses still gave all this stuff up to this point to Deuteronomy as kind of like his final parting words to the younger generation of Israelites. And was also previously established that Moses, due to disobeying God, albeit in a somewhat small, detailed kind of way, but still disobeyed God in a very tense moment. So for that, he's not allowed to cross the Jordan River, which is why Joshua had to be named the next leader in the first place. Footnote there. So this wording here, I guess, or maybe even just the word instructions, is saying, as in the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Greek version, Masoretic text reads, Moses went and spoke, rather than when Moses had finished giving these instructions. I guess it would have said when Moses went and spoke to all the people. Okay. Those are just... this kind of highlights some of what goes on with Bible translations and coming up with new versions, so to speak, of the Bible. They look at these old closer to at least original documents that they then kind of cross-reference with each other and look at, all right, what do we think this wording is here? What does this maybe mean that we could use a different word for in this language? And different things like that. And there's maybe some slight discrepancies here and there in certain ancient versions of these texts. But I say slight because usually it is just like, okay, there's maybe a couple of different words that could mean the same type of thing. One has another possible meaning, whereas this one has a different alternate possible meaning. So, yeah, anyway. Enough about that. But yeah, there's for people who tend to doubt the validity of translations, especially newer ones, just because they think it's newer and it's using different wording than they're used to and different things like that. No. The vast majority of the time, if not pretty much always, these people are doing their work to make sure it's like really, really accurate, or at least as close as possible to the original intent as we can legitimately get to in this day and age. But okay. So, Moses can't cross. Joshua's going to lead them. Moving on to verse 4. The Lord will destroy the nations living in the land, just as he destroyed Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites. The Lord will hand over to you the people who live there, and you must deal with them as I have commanded you. So be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid and do not panic before them, for the Lord your God will personally go ahead of you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you. And that primarily applies to as they're going into the promised land, conquering it, settling in it. I mean, it's also, I guess, true to an extent that God doesn't abandon them. They might abandon God later on, and thus all sorts of things will happen to make it feel like God has abandoned them. But no. Especially in this context, as they're about to conquer these people, God is for sure going with them. It even said in verse 3 that God's going ahead of them to kind of, I don't know if prepare the way is quite the right phrase, but like to, you know, kind of sow the seeds of what is about to be done anyway. Maybe cause a little confusion, panic, whatever, amongst the peoples that are already there. But I will be moving on to verse 7 now. So, then Moses called for Joshua, and as all Israel watched, he said to him, "Be strong and courageous, for you will lead these people into the land that the Lord swore to their ancestors he would give them. You are the one who will divide it among them as their grants of land. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord will personally go ahead of you. He will be with you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you." So just some extra words of encouragement there to Joshua as he is about to lead the people. And I guess also stating that once they do kind of conquer the land and settle in it, well, before they settle, but as they're about to settle and figure out where to settle, Joshua is going to also be responsible, I guess, for dividing the land among the tribes and establishing who gets to go where. Anyway. Alright. Moving along to the next little subsection here with verse 9. So Moses wrote this entire body of instruction in a book and gave it to the priests who carried the ark of the Lord's covenant and to the elders of Israel. Then Moses gave them this command. At the end of every 7th year, the year of release, during the festival of shelters, you must read this book of instruction to all the people of Israel when they assemble before the Lord your God at the place he chooses. Call them all together, men, women, children, and the foreigners living in your towns, so they may hear this book of instruction and learn to fear the Lord your God and carefully obey all the terms of these instructions. Do this so that your children who have not known these instructions will hear them and will learn to fear the Lord your God. Do this as long as you live in the land you are crossing over the Jordan to occupy. I added the word over in there, but whatever. So again, I wish I knew for sure what it meant when it said this entire body of instruction. Because, like, is it just referring to all of Deuteronomy thus far? Is it referring to, like, all the stuff from the entire Old Testament thus far? Or what? But, whatever the case is, every 7th year, they were supposed to read these instructions as a reminder / an introduction for the young ones to, you know, the covenant that they have with God, to the commands laid out, you know, what God expects of them, and things of that sort, so they can, you know, continually go back to it. And I mean, you know, with most of the people not necessarily being able to get a copy of these instructions and read it for themselves, like we might be able to today, regular reading of it to the people would also have helped in a lot of ways, because they wouldn't necessarily, most of them, have access to these instructions the majority of the time. So yeah, reminders are helpful with all this stuff. Okay. Then we get to verse 14. The subsection is once again different, and I wonder how this is perhaps going to give slightly different details than previous, you know, punishments and predictions of disobedience that we've read about. But anyway, verse 14. Then the Lord said to Moses, "The time has come for you to die. Call Joshua and present yourselves at the tabernacle, so that I may commission him there." So Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves at the tabernacle, and the Lord appeared to them in a pillar of cloud that stood at the entrance to the sacred tent. Very similar to how God was meeting directly with Moses previously, even all the way back at, like, Mount Sinai. And I guess with Joshua being in there as well, that's, you know, sort of because of his taking on of the leadership after Moses. Tabernacle, the footnote there just says Hebrew is tent of meeting. Same thing, just a different way to refer to it. Okay, so as Moses and Joshua met at the tabernacle, we get to verse 16. The Lord said to Moses, "You are about to die and join your ancestors. After you are gone, these people will begin to worship foreign gods, the gods of the land where they are going. They will abandon me and break my covenant that I have made with them. Then my anger will blaze forth against them. I will abandon them, hiding my face from them, and they will be devoured. Terrible trouble will come down on them, And on that day they will say, 'These disasters have come down on us because God is no longer among us.' At that time I will hide my face from them on account of all the evil they commit by worshiping other gods." So, as I mentioned before about God not failing or abandoning them, certainly might feel like that after they turn away. But it's because of them turning away first. And this, I forget if previous times with these predictions, if they were coming more so from Moses, or if they were like direct words from God again. But even if it was Moses speaking it before, it would have been probably God in a way through Moses. People are going to turn away. I mean, we're flawed human beings. It's kind of bound to happen, at least at moments here and there. Never mind amongst an entire people group. But even specifically lays out that they're going to worship the gods of the land they're going into. Like, God knows that this is going to happen, which is kind of all the more reason for him to lay it out, you know, to the Israelites that he wants them to get rid of all of these people that they're conquering and get rid of all their idols, all their practices that God doesn't like, all this different kind of stuff, to make it clear that when it does happen, that's on you people. It's not on God. God warned you. So anyway, so with God still talking to Moses, we get to verse 19 here. "So write down the words of this song and teach it to the people of Israel. Help them learn it so it may serve as a witness for me against them. For I will bring them into the land I swore to give their ancestors, a land flowing with milk and honey. There they will become prosperous, eat all the food they want, and become fat. But they will begin to worship other gods. They will despise me and break my covenant. And when great disasters come down on them, this song will stand as evidence against them, for it will never be forgotten by their descendants. I know the intentions of these people, even now, before they have entered the land I swore to give them." And I think the song in question is actually coming in the next chapter. In fact, it's even hinted at the very end of this one. The Song of Moses, right there. So, we'll wait a little bit to discuss that. But another thing that's supposed to serve as a reminder to the people, sorry, another reminder to the people, and as God lays out here, also kind of stand as a witness for his, you know, side of things as to why they would be punished for turning away. Okay, verse 22. "So that very day Moses wrote down the words of the song and taught it to the Israelites. Then the Lord commissioned Joshua son of Nun with these words, 'Be strong and courageous, for you must bring the people of Israel into the land I swore to give them. I will be with you.'" Again, be strong and courageous, like that was mentioned back in verse 7. It's coming up again. I don't know if this is hinting at, you know, that Joshua maybe had a problem with being strong and courageous. But, sorry, when I say had a problem with, not that he didn't like it, it's just that maybe he wasn't the strongest of people. Maybe he wasn't the most courageous of people just by his own nature. But that's a bit more speculative on my part. But further reminders and encouragement certainly doesn't hurt either. Okay, then with verse 24. "When Moses had finished writing this entire body of instruction in a book, he gave this command to the Levites who carried the Ark of the Lord's covenant. Take this book of instruction and place it beside the Ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, so it may remain there as a witness against the people of Israel. For I know how rebellious and stubborn you are. Even now, while I am still alive and am here with you, you have rebelled against the Lord. How much more rebellious will you be after my death? There's definitely some truth to that, which is why the people turning away from God probably doesn't come as much of a surprise. They really have not been prone to following God all this time. Now, we don't hear as much about the younger generation being like that, but given that their parents did, it wouldn't be surprising that they would have carried over some of those bad habits. And once again, placing this beside the Ark of the Covenant to remain as a witness against the people of Israel. God's given all the different ways of saying, you disobeying is on you, not me. Which, now's not the time for it, but even that's a subject of debate in some Christian circles, depending on what particular, theology that you might hold to. But anyway, now's not the time for that. Verse 28. Now summon all the elders and officials of your tribes, so that I can speak to them directly, and call heaven and earth to witness against them. This is still Moses speaking, I think. I know that after my death... Yeah, sure. Definitely Moses, then. I know that after my death you will become utterly corrupt, and will turn from the way I have commanded you to follow. In the days to come, disaster will come down on you, for you will do what is evil in the Lord's sight, making him very angry with your actions. So Moses recited this entire song publicly to the assembly of Israel. And we get to that in the next chapter. But it's... So that gives some context relative to the next chapter, saying that, alright, because I know and God knows that you're going to turn away and worship other gods, do evil things, this song is going to stand as a witness against you regarding this matter. And it says he's talking to the Levites. I don't know if he's actually saying they specifically are the ones that are going to turn against God, although they would likely end up being part of that to some effect. When he says you there, he might be talking about the collective of the people as a whole. I don't know for sure, but point still stands. They're going to turn away, so here's, gonna lay it out for you right now. Here's how it's going to go for you when that happens. Or something to that effect. Anyway, okay. So that does it for Deuteronomy chapter 31. Okay, so we basically got more predictions of Israel turning away from God. Again, kind of not surprising given the human, imperfect nature of everybody, especially even God's people. And I guess Joshua was more officially, or once again, I guess, declared as, Israel's next leader after Moses. And yeah, that was kind of all that really happened in that chapter. I guess it also teased one last reminder that the people are going to get about, following God before they go into the promised land. But anyway, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell if you're on YouTube to get updates when I post new videos. Give me a follow if you see this over on Rumble. And look down in the description to get info on other social media pages and all that good stuff. Right below that, you can also leave any thoughts you have down in the comment section. So that's going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video. But until then, stay cool, people.